Thank you for joining us. It looks like, let's see how many people are here. We have 28 participants. So this will be a networking session. So if at all possible, please put your cameras on and your microphone when you are speaking. How we're going to deal with this session is we have a bunch of questions that were sent in by the volunteers, and there were questions that were family-based, civil-based, and general volunteer questions. So I will be moderating this session, and I will be asking the questions that were sent in regarding family, and then the staff who are on the call can, help answer the questions, and then volunteers can chime in and we can share our experiences. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay. All right, thank you. Does everybody want to turn their cameras on? Let's see. Okay, perfect. All right. Sarah, I see you're ready. Thank you.
Yes,
All right.
I am.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through these questions and then feel free to jump in. I think you all should be able to raise your hands. If not, feel free to just go ahead and talk. And we do have the chat feature available as well. So feel free to use that too. Any questions? All right. First question involves JCC. And this is a very hot topic. We had a lot of JCC questions. As everyone knows across the state, JCC cases are way down. A lot of that is due to station house adjustment and other diversionary programs that are happening in the state of New Jersey. So that was a big concern of all the volunteers. I know you haven't been able to join your boards and handle a lot of cases lately. So any of the staff, if you want to share any of your information on JCC and kind of the current status and what you think might be happening in the future with JCC.
Not to plug my next session, but we'll be going over some of this in my session for our next. I know there's quite a few, I think more than 50 of you that are going to hop on that session, but I'll be talking a little bit about what we've done in Ocean to kind of address moving from multiple boards into one singular county board. And then also address the lack of cases. I mean, our JCCs have had very few cases coming through them. A lot of that has to do with new direction from the Attorney General's office through the Juvenile Justice Commission, which Jessica already mentioned, station house adjustments. And some of the things that we're doing to keep our volunteers informed of cases when they don't actually have cases to hear. So I'll be going over that a little bit more, but I've seen a lot of kind of what everyone's been seeing around the state, just less juvenile cases even being charged. So the charging document is the first thing that brings it before the court. And with station house adjustments, that's where the officer who is on site or the mandatory reporter who's working with the officer can determine to kind of divert that case before even doing the charging document. So without a charging document, it doesn't come to intake. It doesn't get funneled to JCC because it's going through another diversionary program. So we're looking right now to see if there's different ways we can use our JCC volunteers with things like truancy or just kind of going over case numbers. So there's a lot there that I think we can grow our JCC so that our boards can come back together. But we did in Ocean County anyways, we did lose quite a few of our boards, and they've collapsed down into one county board now. So I don't know if any of the other employees have been seeing that in their counties.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Keene. I am the FJ team leader in Mercer, as well as the JCC coordinator. Ms. Chavez, I definitely echo everything that you said. I've built, we have amazing volunteers that really are very passionate about this work, and it's very, very appreciable. And it's, I always describe to my volunteers that it's fortunate, but also unfortunate that we have cases and don't have cases. But again, I think sessions like this are extremely helpful. I've also sent out, I know, again, I would never want to lose any volunteers from the JCC, but also the intensive supervision probation is looking for volunteers as well, and that might help like supplement some hours that we lose from the JCC committee. But again, I have been very, very fortunate to meet the volunteers here in Mercer and, you know, volunteers throughout the state. And I appreciate everything that everybody does and the passion and the dedication that everybody has for this as well. And I definitely echo everything that you say, Ms. Chavez, as well. Thank you.
I think you hit it right on the head. We have so many dedicated. I have one JCC volunteer that's been doing it for almost 25 years. You know, and certainly during the pandemic, we saw a shift in how we handled it. And then now with the downturn of cases, trying to find something where they still feel engaged to the work is kind of what we shifted to.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Rebecca. Sorry for the delay. We're having a little technical difficulties. Any other comments on JCC and the current status of how things are going?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Carla Burke. I'm from Essex. I know for us in Essex, since we did the consolidation, I lost a lot of people because everyone has this thing, they just want to, you know, deal with their own towns. And I've had a very dedicated volunteer that just passed away. She's been on the committee since I started. So she was there for a really long time. And before she left, she, thank God, appointed someone else for to take on her role. So which was good for me. But now we're in the process of really needing more volunteers because the cases are picking up a little bit. And I find myself having to send cases to other areas, like further out, that don't have enough people to hear the cases. So that's what I'm dealing with in Essex right now.
Carla, what's your barrier? Is it people not willing to volunteer or what's?
Well, the problem we had since we did the consolidation, since we did the consolidation, a lot of people, they don't want to like work with the other towns. They just want to deal with the towns where they live. And like, for example, my committee that was in Livingston, they dismantled altogether because they didn't want to cross over, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, we had a pretty substantial conversation with our committee members. And one of the most hot topics was how are we going to handle the chairperson? Because most of the people that stayed on were our chairs from their individual municipalities. So I think that was some of our pushback there. I didn't have the exact issue that you had where they didn't want to help out because, you know, a lot of who we have here, we kind of, you know, did the Ocean County chant for them, like we're all one community. But there was that question of like, how are we going to handle our chair people? Because, you know, the chairperson takes their job very seriously. I've seen that in Atlantic and Cape May when I worked there. I see that in Ocean when I'm here. And so we worked out a system where they would rotate so that everyone still kind of kept that idea of the chairperson and be able to unfold for their municipality and represent their municipality. But yeah, that's an interesting, thank you for bringing that up. I hadn't even thought that could potentially be an issue because we haven't seen that here.
Yeah, but thank God the other committees that I do have, they do help out. They don't have a problem like helping me. But yeah, I'm in need of volunteers like like yesterday.
Do you have juveniles on yours?
And that's another thing. Right now I have one. I get, you know, it's no, what is it? It's no kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like no incentive. And you know, these kids these days want something to do something. So, and that's another problem. Like, what am I gonna get for sitting on this? What am I gonna do? You're gonna help out your fellow youths, you know, people like yourself. But It's a little challenging for me right now, but it'll work itself out. I have some ideas in mind.
And one thing to remember too, and I know this was mentioned, we can share JCC volunteers statewide. So if any JCC volunteers are on the call now who may not have as many cases, you can definitely join and volunteer for multiple counties. So if you are interested in doing that, reach out to your volunteer liaison. And they will be able to get the right information to you. And if for some reason you are unable to get through to them, feel free to reach out to me and I can provide any additional information.
Thank you. That's good to know.
Of course. All right. Any other JCC before we move on to some other programs? Okay, so we're gonna go for CASA. So this one's gonna go for my CASA friends. This question is, as a CASA caseworker, how do you avoid bias toward the side you represent? Any CASA friends want to jump in?
Repeat the question. Can you hear me?
No CASA friends? Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, okay, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure thing. Okay. As a CASA caseworker or CASA volunteer, how do you avoid bias towards the side you represent?
Toward the size you represent?
The child.
Oh, the child you represent. And how you avoid bias in what respect, the overall, or, because bias can come from.
So it's
you know,
a pretty broad question, but we'll
Yeah.
narrow it down a little bit. So I guess when you are a CASA volunteer and you're dealing with a lot of challenging situations and you have a lot of parties involved, and maybe like this this child needs this and so is not listening, this way, and there's just maybe a breakdown in communication between the partners. How do you best deal with that? Did that make a little bit more sense?
It adds to the your original question, so I think I get a sense of what you're asking. And since I'm talking, I guess I get to answer that question.
You
Um,
win.
I know, right? It's still tough to answer, because as you said, bias is really broad, and there is challenges when you're dealing at different levels. And I guess the one thing you have to do is recognize when something like that is happening, right? Sometimes it's not upfront, but after a while, you tend to see it based on the hard time you're having to either put your message across, or the hard time the child is having in whatever capacity it is. For me, when I deal with bias, I have to, again, I don't confront it heads on, but I have to be kind of diplomatic about it and try to focus on what the need is and try to work in that direction. I don't know if that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, that's helpful. Anybody else want to chime in or share their experience with that question, or a little slightly different?
Yeah, I could
Sure.
add to that. It's the one way of dealing with bias that I find is that learn the party that you're dealing with. Like, the culture might be different, their view of things might be different. So it's to get to know that individual on, what they stand for and what they believe in, and just their environment, and kind of take it from there. It is a little bit broad, but I find that once you get to know somebody, it's not like you're going to know every culture that you come across, but the basics of, like some culture, handshake is a big deal. Some culture, touching is a big deal. So they don't like to be touched. So it's just those little details you can pay attention to as you deal with individuals, like the parents, the children. The more you know about them, the more you can eliminate biases or avoid it.
Thank you. Any other CASA?
Hi, my name is Kyoko. I'm also CASA from Mercer County. So yeah, I agree with Alex and Anis, and I think it's important for us to recognize that we may be biased. So I use a lot of supervision with my CASA supervisors. You know, when I talk it through, she may be, able to help me notice something, understand something, and also lots of information I gather so that I can remain objective.
That's great. That's a great idea. Your supervisor's always there to sort of help you and talk you through any challenging situations, so definitely lean on them. All right. We have about 12 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to, let's see. This is a really good question that we at the judiciary are always looking for the answer to. So this is this is a great format to ask our volunteers what you think we can do to make this happen. So this question is specifically for Child Placement Review Board, but it really does cover all programs. So you don't have to think about this as a Child Placement Review Board. You can just think of it on a broader level. So how can we involve a more diverse group of people and people who have been involved with the courts to be involved with our judiciary volunteer programs? This is like the $1 million question we always try to answer. So we would love your feedback.
Well, I'm a Child Placement Review Board volunteer. I'm also chair of the New Jersey Child Placement Advisory Council. And for the last 2 or 3 years, we have been trying to have more diverse child placement review boards, because in many counties, they are not diverse based on the population. And I can give an example. A few years ago, we did a program where we visited each board in the state. And we went to Camden, and I'm sure all of you know Camden. The entire Child Placement Review Board there was white. And I was astounded, because Camden's caseload is basically Black and Hispanic. So this is something we've been trying to work on with the Administrative Office of the Courts in terms of how the boards recruit for their volunteers, because there's just too many boards in the state that are not diverse, which has an effect on how they review the cases that they get. So there's still a lot to be done in that area.
Yep, that's why it's the $1 million question. But every
Yes.
time we have these conversations, especially with our volunteers who are on the ground, day to day doing the work, it's invaluable to us to hear these suggestions. In the past, I know we have joined the Minority Concerns. Now they're called Diversity and Inclusion Committee. They switched their name a little bit, but we have actually presented to one of their meetings, and we asked them for any suggestions. And they did give us a few suggestions, which we have been working on little by little as we go. So we do try to get involved with those different kinds of committees to really broaden our horizons as well, so we know what we can do best to meet the needs of the boards, especially in the communities.
Right.
I'll say the one thing in Ocean, so for those of you who don't know, Ocean is extremely white as a population. But that doesn't mean that that's who we're seeing come through our CPR boards or our JCC boards, so diversity is still really important for our volunteers. We've been working our faith-based groups within those communities in order to at least get the word out that volunteer opportunities are available, and why it's so important that we have the diverse boards. And so we really have been kind of working those communities. We brought in a few new volunteers. I don't know that I think we have one Spanish volunteer at this point that we've been able to bring on board. But we continue to go back into those pools and remind people why it's so important that they, volunteer for these boards. The other thing that I was going to say, just back to your question about getting those that were previously involved in who have been successful. So individuals that have gone through the process Whether it's CPR where they've, been able to retain their parental rights and they've completed what they needed to complete and they've moved beyond that. I think that there is an opportunity there, whether it's from an educational standpoint or from like a mentor-mentee standpoint, to bring them in and incorporate them, particularly their viewpoint. I mean, from someone who's gone through it and knows what the process is and knows what some of the pitfalls are for the parents, if we're talking about CPR, I think that there is an opportunity for them to have input in a way that's meaningful. I just don't know how you would approach that, when you talk about confidentiality and that, I don't know how you recruit that person unless at the end of successful completion of their case, they're given the opportunity, whether it be by the judge in the courtroom to say, hey, your case is being dismissed, this case is now concluded. We just want to give you the opportunity to give us feedback on the process. And then that would start that interaction to say that maybe later they want to join the committee to give their input in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Sarah. So I know we're running low on time. I'm so sorry we didn't start directly at 4:15. But we have covered so far JCC, Child Placement Review Board, and CASA. So the last one I'd like to talk about is Supervised Visitation Program. So there weren't any specific Supervised Visitation Program questions. So I just want to put it out to the group and especially those individuals involved in the program. Is there anything that you would like to hear about with your program or anything you'd like to share about your program that would be beneficial to the people on the meeting?
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria. I'm the coordinator of the Supervised Visitation Program in Essex. As far as diversity, my volunteers are very diversified, and that's really a benefit to the program. I can always use more volunteers. As of this moment, we don't have a waiting list, so any family that's all ready to start, they can start. But we can always use more volunteers in Essex.
Great. And correct me if I'm wrong, but supervised visitation, that's all in person. So there's no real virtual option for that.
Correct.
Okay.
We attempted virtual and
That was challenging.
didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're all in person.
So that's one thing. And this is the last thing I say because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But for those volunteers who may have left the program because they moved to remote, or maybe they do want to have a few more in-person experiences, for the counties that have supervised visitation program, that's always an opportunity for you to learn a new program. And even obviously you would have to kind of be close enough to the county to make it feasible for you to travel there for the visits. But that is always an option because you can share volunteers with that program across the state. So something to think about. And even for the coordinators on the call, that's something to think about if you need to recruit more, because we can send out a blast and some people may be willing, to help out and drive a little bit to get to the in-person volunteering opportunity. All right, so it is 4:46. We've had a long program so far, so I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to take your break. One thing I just want to say before we wrap up is our next session is the education sessions. So for those of you who registered early, you should have received an email with the link to join your education session. If you were unable to register, you should have received the PDF form that has all the links for all of these sessions, and I'm going to drop it in the chat as well just so everybody has it. But feel free to join another group, or if you are unsure what you registered for or can't find it in your emails, because I know I sent everyone a lot of emails, feel free to look at this list and choose what you would like to go to next. All right. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time, and this was a great networking session. We'll see you all in the next session.